If you're like me, you were taught that music theory means nothing. You don't need music theory to be a great music producer. All the top producers making number one hits, they necessarily didn't have music theory, which could be true, but it doesn't mean that music theory wasn't used for their actual hit record. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys why, from my perspective, music theory is super essential for becoming a music producer, especially into musicianship. So hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. I need you guys to smash that like button so I can extend that S. If you don't know me, I'm Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. We train over 1 million producers around the world. Some have gone to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, Polo G, Trippie Redd, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Glorilla. Some have won Grammy, some have gone to won platinum plaques. So I want to thank you guys for watching today. So most producers, they play by ear, which is fine because you're creating from an intent. But I think the issue that we have is we're not perfectly translating our intent. So I'm gonna pull up an app called Chord Watch. You guys ask me what this app is all the time. I'll link it below. So most producers, they might do something like this, especially with the easier beats that are more like drum focused. Okay, but what if we want to turn it up and add some composition to it? Let's add some chords to it. But then we say, okay, that's kind of bland. How do we create something that's more unique? So now we look into chord extensions, and this is why you have to understand music theory, because not that you have to understand what a chord sounds like as soon as somebody plays a chord, like, what chord is that? That's not the entirety of music theory. Really, that's a small piece of music theory. That's more so ear training. If you're trying to become a musician, that would be more important. But most people, they compose, step by step. That's why sheet music is a thing. They weren't just freestyling their songs. So what if I did something like this and switched up the ending to where now I'm playing a whole different chord in my right hand. This is a D major chord. And then I'm playing this over B in the bass. This really creates a B minor 7th chord because I'm just transposing down the root note. If you didn't know this from a hole in the wall, you wouldn't know why it sounds good. So let's do this. And now the question becomes, can I make the other chords sound more exotic? So let's start adding chord extensions. And now we're getting a more lush sound, okay? So this is how we get past, getting pigeonholed in one genre. A lot of people, you guys get pigeonholed in a genre. You're just seen as a trap producer or a beat maker because you can't escape whatever you're making currently, whatever that thing is. And also, guys, keep in mind that, a lot of top producers are using loops from people who know music theory, like a lot of music theory. Like they're jazz musicians who make loops and compositions and guitar players and piano players. They're not winging it. At least they know enough to get a good sound. And music theory goes very deep. So like I said, we can start from here, which is basic. And some people don't even know how to go that far. They might just go here. But they don't know how to go somewhere with their music. And that going somewhere is what music theory is all about. So for example, if I had two notes, for example, E and F, let's harmonize these. I'm not going to bore you guys to tears about how to harmonize, but I teach what's called chord code system. I'm going to save you the time here. Okay. Okay, so we have E and you're like, okay, where do I go from here? Now we can go up 5 notes from F, starting at the root note. We can count up 5. We can go up to B flat. Okay, and now we're creating a journey for the music. Now I'd probably revoice it to where it's a little more exotic than that, but this sounds a little more musical. Taking that top note up a couple of notes. Okay, now let's, intensify the other chords. And now we're getting into more exotic songwriting, okay? Or, some techniques. We could take this root note, or wherever we are, and we're at F right now, and we can count down 5 notes. So instead of going up 5 notes, you can count down 5 notes. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that lands at C. And then we just harmonize C. And now it's going to be more of a circular sound because it wants to go back to where it was. And And now you have an infinite loop because you're going down 5. Anytime you go down 5, you usually create a looping sound. It's called the perfect fifth, circle of fifths. It's called a circle because you want to loop it back. Now, can we make this more exotic? Of course. So we could take, now I'm just showing you guys stuff. I'm not, trying to sit here and explain every little thing. But here we can go from E, F, and then we can create what's called a dominant chord. And we can either go back to F, or we can go back to E. Let's see what happens here. So let's do, now the hard part is getting your hands right when you're playing this. Then we can go right back up to F. If we wanted to go back to E, you would use the fifth of E, in this case, the dominant chord, starting at the fifth of E, which would be A. Let's make E a little more exotic because I use a really jazzy chord there, so let's do it again. Just got to figure out which octave you want. Okay, so E, I think I said that A was the fifth of E. That was my mistake. My brain was working too fast. The fifth of E would be, let's count up 7. It's actually B. That was my mistake. I was thinking too fast. But let's say we were to go down to A, for example, with that dominant chord just then. We want to come back to D, because D is the root note. If A is the fifth, D would be the root note. That was my mistake. I was just talking too fast. So here we go, E, F. So see, there's a reasoning behind what I'm doing. I'm not just guessing. I'm not freestyling. I'm not just going by ear, which you can do. I teach you guys how to create from scratch, going by ear. But there's more to music production than just guessing your way through it. Okay, now what if I want to, like I said, figure out the fifth of E, so it's going to be B. Now we have to figure out a dominant chord from B in this case. So B is right here. And now we're going to use what are called chord codes. I teach these at busyworksbeats.com. So this is called the root note. Now we're going to count up the keyboard. The chord code here is 0, 4, 7, 10, 14. You don't need to memorize this. I have a chord code chart for you guys. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So here's the dominant ninth chord. See how I just created that from scratch? Not knowing anything about the scale. I'm not talking about scales. We're talking about creating chords from numbers. Now I want to revoice this to sound a little more jazz-like. So we're going to take what's called the fifth and the ninth. I call these tonal twins. They like to, move in the same direction. And now we're going to move them up 1. So it's going to be here. So let me just visually kind of eyeball where we're at with it. So we're starting from B to G. All right, so let's play that chord again. Now let's make the first 2 chords feel like the second chords, and let's use what are called chord extensions. So now we're in 7th chords here. And now we have a super jazz-like chord progression just like that. Now, if you guys are trying to get into 2000s beats and all these new jazz and all that, you have to understand dominant chords, which I teach at busyworksbeats.com/music theory essentials. You have to specifically look for that course because it guides you through every single building block until you get up to this point. Okay, so now it's just about practicing that movement. Boom, simple as that. So when people say music theory is pointless, I'm like, a lot of your favorite R&B tracks use music theory. I'll even give you guys a tip that's a little more advanced. If you want more realistic chord voicing that sounds like the harmonic series, you want to think in terms of harmonics, this gets deep, but I teach this in the music theory magic course that I have. So basically, instead of playing a chord like this with just, 3 notes, if you want to make it sound more pleasing or more natural, we're going to raise what's called the third because this mimics what's called the harmonic series, the way a sound is actually built up. Okay, so let's raise that third, so that'd be G. And this is how you get that soul sound too. Sorry, no. So let's raise the third. I'm going to do it in more of an R&B fashion. So we're going to raise the third here. So you could even use that same concept, you know, thinking about chord voicing here when we have a seventh chord. For example, if you want to go into neo soul, we're going to use C and G because they're a perfect fifth away as anchor tones. So it's all about the third. C is the third, G is the seventh. They basically act like, again, tonal twins because they're a perfect fifth away. Okay, so it's just little stuff like this. I know I'm kind of giving you guys a lot of different things you could do, but I'm really trying to give you game on like the mindset behind music theory. It's not this scary thing that people will make you think you have to memorize sheet music and a bunch of like stuff. Just like that, we created the melody that sounded fire. So it's the only hard part about raising your third is just like knowing where the actual voicing is. You have to practice. So a good thing to do when you're like jumping really far away is to make your hand like this on the keyboard and just keep your fingers locked in so that you could just move it with the keys. That way you're not thinking about where the note is, you're just measuring. And now we have this super emotional sound just by raising the third. Now, if I play that normally, it would sound like this. Which it does have some emotion to it, but it's not this. It's not melodically. You know, that's melodic. Okay, so just raise that third and you guys will open up a new avenue. So again, when people tell me music theory isn't important, I'm just like, maybe they're just not aware of how much music theory goes into their music. I'll just show you guys a couple things before we leave out here. For example, if I was doing Yeat stuff, like old school Yeat Rage, you know, he works in what's called quartal harmony. So you're going to add a note, count up 5 notes. Okay, now take that note and drop it down an octave. That's Yeat sound. Okay, in a nutshell. Now, if you're going Playboy Carti, old school Rage, you're thinking of what's called quintal harmony. So you're going to take a note, add 7 notes above, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That gives you a perfect fifth. And then you're going to add that same note down an octave. It's a little bit darker, usually meant for guitar. And they use a lot of half steps. So that's, you know, there's a music theory, even in music that you might not think has a music theory. There's a theory behind it. So if you want to learn that theory, I make it very, 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 very simple because I teach you guys how to like stop thinking about it in terms of old school music theory. I teach you a new method. I call it chord codes. Basically, let me just show you guys real quick. I skimmed over it earlier, but I can close my eyes. I can pick a note. We happen to land on D. You don't even need to know what this note is named. As long as you can count, you're fine. So let's say you wanted to make a minor chord. The minor chord is 0, 3, 7. I'll give you guys a chord code chart for free at busyworksbeats.com. When you sign up, go to where it says free downloads and look for the chart folder. So here is D, for example, and we're going to apply the chord code. The minor chord code 0, 3, 7. So wherever you land is 0. Okay, so this is the root note or 0. Now we're going to count up our keyboard. 1, 2, 3. Oops, sorry. 0, 1, 2, 3. Note by note. And then 4, 5, 6, 7. Play all these notes together. 0, 3, 7. You have a minor chord no matter where you are in the keyboard. Let me show you guys how exotic this gets. I'm going to close my eyes again. pick a random note. We picked 2 in that case, but we picked B flat. Again, you don't need to know the note names just yet. Let's say you want to make a minor ninth chord, which is a very, very, very advanced chord, a jazz-like chord. The chord code is 0371014. So again, you'll get the chart so you don't have to memorize this. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Play all these notes together. You now have a super jazzy chord just like that. It's all based in number. So when you understand the system, you'll stop looking at music theory as this like advanced language that you have to learn. It's just taught in a terrible way, in my opinion. And I break through all that terribleness and give you guys the good stuff that you need to know as a music producer. And now you guys can practice this. Just like that. Now you have a new chord unlocked. All right, guys, so I'm going to leave it here. I just wanted to give you guys those little nuggets of information, and that will fast forward you to probably 5 to 10 years in music theory, because the way it's taught is on sheet music. It's really hard to understand it when we're in modern day DAWs. So go to busyworksbeats.com/music theory. I'll help you guys there. Peace out, guys.